Right. Welcome everyone to our 9:15 talk. It's a pleasure to have my friend Suzanne here with us. And she's going to take us through an interesting journey that she herself had. So over to you, Suzanne. Please introduce yourself and take us on the journey where you're taking us.
Hello and good evening to you all. I hope you can hear me okay. Can I have a thumbs up for that?
Yeah, please? We can hear you, Suzanne.
Yeah, good, great. When Niket asked me to introduce my work to you in this talk, it was quite difficult for me to decide which aspect of my work I would present to you today. And so I thought I'd start right from the present moment, where I am now, what I'm doing, and how I'm thinking about developing my projects in the future. But to get to the present moment, I am going to have to take you back on a journey that I've been myself traveling on for the past 14 years now, since 2007, a journey along River Ganga that has formed a very large piece of my work while I've been here in India, at least. So here, let's have a look at right at the beginning on my first slide. I'm showing you a picture of my website, pyramidkey.com. And this is a little bit like a museum. It's where I keep all the information about my work, the films that I've made, the books that I've written, and the pictures that I've made, which I'm going to be describing to you tonight, and also the installation pieces, the devices that I'm developing with it in mind to create something beneficial for the environment and for our home use. I'm not going to get into that tonight so much. I would like to stay with this story of Ganga because it really gives it's a good way for me to describe my work A to Z, because it comprises a number of aspects of my work, including filmmaking, including writing, and including taking photographs and then developing those photographs into large pictures, which I came to call photo collage art. I'm going to describe that in a little while to you. So how and where did all this start? So when I came over to Nepal in 2001, I was not an artist. I was not really doing anything that creative. I mean, creative enough, but really not to the extent that I developed over these years. I certainly wasn't a filmmaker. And although I really enjoyed taking photographs, I was not a photographer, not professional by any means. I mean, I could point and shoot an automatic camera like most of us could, but I didn't really have any knowledge about the technicalities and about really how to even frame a picture. So in 2001, when I came over to Nepal, within the next few months, actually, I met a very precious master of Tibet, one of the old school masters, really, you could say, one of the teachers of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and very much a master of masters. He taught a lot of the very high masters himself. So here is His Eminence Chögyam Trichin Rinpoche, who at the time was living in Kathmandu, Nepal. And somehow I was introduced to him like this. It was a very organic process. I didn't go searching for him. I wasn't looking for a master. I wasn't doing any of these things, but I was taken to him, and he very soon swept me under his wing and taught me the Buddha Dharma, the Tibetan Buddha Dharma, but really a very particular aspect of it, which is the Vajrayana Path, the path of the diamond path, the path that really cuts through all the trippings and the obscurations that we mentally and physically have to endure with our life here on Earth, and showed me what all this was really all about. which was what I was looking for actually at a soul level. Outwardly, I wasn't really searching it, but when I found it, it just slotted in to my life like that. And everything else disappeared, and I went fully into the practice of the Buddha Dharma, attending the teachings, and many private sessions with His Eminence in order to clarify the meanings. And then he would send me into retreat, and I would have to complete a certain number of mantra recitation or visualizations and certain sadhanas and this and that. So this all went on for 6 years while I was living in Nepal until he passed away. So anyway, let's start with Rinpoche is here in 2003. I've just been to meet him, and he's telling me, he's calling out to me actually as I'm walking out of his room. He's calling out for me to take photographs. Now, I'd had a very interesting series of experiences with my recent cameras. When I went on a trip up to Mustang in 2001, and I had traveled through the Kali Gandaki, one of the deepest gorges on earth, at the start of that trek up to Muktinath in Mustang, my camera, my digital camera, my swanky digital camera that I'd actually bought on a trip over to the US, had broken. I just sat it on a ledge, and I hadn't put it there properly, and it just dropped off and smashed. That was it. My beautiful camera was gone. But several years later, the Lama, not His Eminence who we're looking at in the picture here, but a Lama who was the abbot of the monastery up in Mustang, who I was traveling with at the time, who had seen this experience of my camera breaking, he very kindly gave me a Pentax camera, but it was one of those click and wind, 35mm film. So you sort of had to be really careful with every single picture you were taking because it was going to be developed, and you had to pay for each of the prints. You remember those days. And one problem with the camera was that its light meter wasn't working. So normally on this level of click and wind camera, there was a little light meter that came when you put your eye through the viewfinder, and it would tell you which aperture speed to put in and which shutter speed to use. But the light meter was broken on this camera, so I had to learn to read the light. And this became an extremely important lesson, and also a way that I could practice understanding the nature of appearance, the appearance that's around me, by working with this camera and having to learn to read the light. So at this point, it was like 10 days prior to that this Lama had given me this camera. Then suddenly I'm in Rinpoche's room, and he's telling me, take photographs. So I'm like, this is like a really big coincidence. And I love to see patterns. I love synchronicities. I love to watch life dish out things on a plate. First comes this, then comes that, and it all slots into place. This is such a beauty for me of life when these synchronicities occur. And in this moment, I recognize I've been given a camera by one Lama, and now another Lama is telling me take photographs. So I went out into the mountains on that trip that I was about to go on, and I took photographs. In fact, you could almost say I went a little mad taking photographs, because I took more than 1,000 photographs. And we're not talking digital pictures here, we're talking click and wind prints. So let me show you a couple of these pictures. So now you'll see here are 3 pictures that I've chosen out of the 1,200 pictures that I took on that trip to Muktinath in Mustang in northern Nepal. Now, these you might look at and go, oh, wow, these are really kind of interesting pictures, the light, the colors, the this, the that. Well, let me assure you, it was a lucky beginner's fluke, because I was actually putting in the wrong shutter speeds and the wrong aperture settings. But what the camera did on this particular trip was that it opened my eyes to a whole nother layer of the valley. I was finding rainbows falling into the valleys. You see in this picture, let me find the, I'll see if I can find the pointer.
Your pointer's already there. You can use your mouse to point.
Oh, okay. So see this lady here standing next to these prayer wheels. I mean, honestly, I promise you, I couldn't say whether she had been there before or she'd actually like appeared out of this ray of light. I mean, this valley was a little bit like this. It was a very mysterious, very sacred, and extremely spiritual valley. I had a very interesting interaction with this particular statue of Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava, who actually historically is said to have taken Buddhism to Tibet in the 8th century. I did retreat in a temple right up at the top of the Muktinath Valley, 4,000 meters above sea level. I did a retreat in the Gompa there. And this, I was kind of, I know it's going to sound strange, but I'm going to say it anyway. It was like this statue was instructing me. And first of all, I was coming down into the shrine room. I was staying in a small bedroom up above on the first floor of the Gompa. And I would come down to sit in the shrine room to do my sadhanas. And this statue was really scolding me and telling me I was doing the wrong thing and I should be doing something else. And why are you practicing now? I want you here at night. You come down here and you sit here all night. But you have to understand, it was late March, early April in Mustang, and it was snowing. It was freezing. And you know, I sat there wrapped in a blanket in the middle of the night, reciting these mantras. I mean, this statue wasn't physically talking to me. It wasn't like he was saying, "Oh, now you must do this." It was more like this kind of mirror of this kind of guru mirror, this knowledge, intimate knowledge of what I need to do. I really needed to do it to wake up and you know, develop my awareness and to stop procrastinating and cut through all the obscurations and all these things. So these are some of the photos I took on that trip. Now, when I came back to Kathmandu after this trip, I had these 1,200 pictures, like, I mean, all printed out. I went to a photo shop in Kathmandu and I had them printed out so that I had them in a pile. I mean, there was a huge pile of these photographs. And it seemed like such a waste not to do something with them. So I like spread them all over my floor. I had a very large room in the front of the house. And I put all these photographs literally across the floor and left little patches, little oases where I could put my feet to walk across the room. And slowly I just left them there. And slowly as I was, you know, going around my business, I would just, you know, glance around at the different photos and certain photos started jumping out at me. So I started collecting those photos together and then I put them to one side and I started making this natural sort of shape of a cross. And so then the two keys, one lock was born. At this point, I decided I really need to do an exhibition. You know, I need to do an exhibition of my work. You know, I got really excited actually at this point. And, you know, we're talking about this piece of, this piece, Two Keys, One Lock, was not just a tiny picture like you're seeing on the screen here. Each of these sides to the keys is 6 feet long. So it's huge. And it's got 75 photos in it. And in this particular picture, in this first picture, I'm describing the nature of the elements. So you'll see in the bottom left corner here, this is green, and it's like a bowl shape, and it's wind. I'm following the traditional symbology of the Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism. So I'm keeping to this pattern rather than going off at a tangent and just creating my own shapes and things. So I'm staying fairly traditional in this picture in that sense. Then over here we have the red triangle, fire, and then the square yellow earth and the white circle water, and in the center the blue space. So you see here from the space, the four elements are extending, and we can imagine this like a dynamic movement. Out of the space arise the four elements, and then the four elements dissolve back into the space. It's quite a simple picture. The message is quite simple, but it's the base of all my other pictures. All the other pictures contain the nature of the five elements because, of course, they are so pertinent to every part of our lives. Then the second picture I made, I decided that for this exhibition, I couldn't only show one picture, I would need a second picture. So I did something a little more ambitious here. I made a structure that could, you see here, there are two hinges that could fold over, and when it folded over, it would become an eye. And the eye in itself is the pure vision. And when it's opened out, it becomes transformed into organized confusion. Now, you may think that's a bit of a wacky title, but actually it's really, really precise. Because here in the center of this picture, what I've got in contrast to what I made in the Two Keys, One Lock, where all the elements are separated from each other. I mean, in reality, the elements are not, of course, separated from each other. They're very, very much integrated, completely integrated. So here I show this bowl shape of wind holding this triangle of fire, and then the circle of the water, and then the square of the earth. And then, of course, in the center is the space. So again, you've got the same idea of the elements, and again, using the same symbology, the same colors, the same shapes, but this time they're all on top of each other, so they're interacting with each other. But what I also have here is another element, which is this downward pointing triangle. Now, this is becomes important when I come to discuss my next piece, so I'll just hold that there. The exhibition was very successful. I showed these two pieces. This piece, the Pure Vision transformed into Organized Confusion, is actually 11 feet in length. Like, it's really long, and 3.5 feet wide. So just to find a wall long enough to hold this picture is always quite a feat. So I showed these two large pictures, and then some other pictures. I blew up some other pictures that I really liked from the trip. And that was my exhibition, Virtual Mustang, in 2005. The first time I'd ever done an exhibition. So it was all an experiment. But I really had this vision at that point that I wanted to do a very large exhibition in, a big Western city like London or New York, or, something of that ilk. So it came that at the same time, Rinpoche had another student from Singapore, a fellow called Peter, and he wanted to do some kind of Dharma project. And he talked to me about it, and I said, well, for a long time, I've been wanting to make a film about the Lamas and to show different places in Nepal where they live, what they do, how they do it, their pujas, their ceremonies, and blah, blah, blah. He liked the idea. And so we did it. And I took visuals of 3 different places in Nepal, the high Himalayas, Muktinath, the middle Himalayas, middle hill, at a place called Maratika, which is also known as Haleshi for the Nepalese, and Maratika for the Tibetans, a very, very famous place where the caves of immortality are. An extraordinary place, actually. At the time when I went there, there was no road, so I had to walk there. It was the only way. It was another whole story, a tremendous journey to go there. And then the other place, the third place that I would show in this movie would be Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Buddha. So I had this sort of low lands, the Tarai of Nepal, and then the middle hills of Maratika and the high hills of Muktinath, beyond the Annapurnas. So I had all the visuals for this film, and now I needed to make it. And I was absolutely perplexed as how to make this movie. I didn't want to just make any old movie. I didn't want to make a documentary like, here we are in such and such a place, and here are these people doing this, doing that. But I wanted to embed the meaning of the Dharma that I was studying so intensely at that time with Rinpoche and in other teachings. And I wanted to embed this into the timeline of the movie so that it would just, I mean, you know, I didn't even need to say it. It would just be like an automatic transmission to the viewer, in the sense that I would embed shapes, timing, color, the different way I'd make up the visuals so they could be like in a spiral, or they could come round and repeat themselves again, or many other techniques. I wanted to embed the meaning of the Dharma. So what I needed to do was I needed a language of symbol. And this is what I had to discover. And I had no idea about what I was really doing. I was just doing it and figuring it out as I went along. So I wanted to actually, at the time, I was really focusing on this meaning of the relationship between absolute and relative reality. And, you know, this was a conundrum for me. I was trying to understand this vastness of infinity or eternity containing this relative reality within it. And how did that happen? And, you know, many questions in my mind. So it was at the same time as being an artistic project, it was also a way that I was able to digest and to also understand the teachings rather than, you know, just an intellectual understanding. I was now kind of putting it into a context that I was finding myself. I was developing myself, the shape, the sounds, the timing, the words, so many things. These are all symbols. In the relative reality, we are heavily reliant on symbols. So it was during the time that I was figuring out how to make this movie that I made this art piece, which I came to call the Circle of Immortality. I'm not going to go into the detail because it's very intricate, it's very interesting, but it's long. So trust me when I tell you that I somehow made this, looking at this, having this focus upon the absolute and relative reality, I created this art piece. Very basically, I'd cut a circle, I put a square inside it, put a circle inside it, put a square inside it, put a circle inside it, put a square inside it. Why did I do that? Because of the symbol. The square was representing relative reality and the circle was representing absolute reality. And I needed to put them together. But as I put them together, I discovered that they could never actually merge together. They would always be another space for them to continue in the center. You know, my pencil got to the center of the circle and of the outer circle, and I couldn't physically draw anymore because there was no more physical space. So at that point, I had to understand that I wasn't able to unite these two things using this method. I needed to do something a little more drastic. And to do that, I had to cut in to each layer of circle. I had to cut in through to the next layer of square, the next layer of square, the next layer of square, etc., until I had a spiral. I cut out the spiral. And then with the spiral, I had this I had a point at the apex of this spiral. I had a point of dissolution, but again, I knew that this would go on to infinity. This spiral wasn't stopping where my physical spiral was stopping. It was only because there was no more physical space. Otherwise, I could have gone on doing this same spiraling motion to infinity. So then I was like, how can I stop? How can I cut infinity at this point? And to do that, I actually needed to use this method of the triangles, which you'll see are holding up and supporting the spiral, because without this method of support for the spiral, it was just going to fall down onto the ground again. So I want to move on from the Circle of Immortality, because really here I'm just explaining how I already developed this idea of needing to embed meaning into an art piece, or later on a photo collage art picture, in order to then take that piece, which I did here. I took this art piece, the Circle of Immortality art piece, and I used it as the structure for the movie that I made about the lamas in Nepal. And this was the first time I'd done that. I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have any, it's not a genre of filmmaking. It's just the way that I was making the film and the way that it was coming out. So really what I want to express here is that, because we're going to have a cross of timing here, it was in around 2007 that I was still making this film, the Circle of Immortality film about the lamas. And I only made the final version of it in around 2008. And then I only wrote about how I made the 3 versions of the film and all the thinking I'd gone through, because I took notes. I made notes at every single part of the process. So I copied up my notes and then I filled it in afterwards. And I made this book, The Living Pyramid, to describe how I embedded that Circle of Immortality piece into the timeline of a movie so that it would transmit the meaning that I'd embedded into the Circle of Immortality art piece, this union of the absolute and relative reality. This was my aim, let's say. So you'll see that this book, The Living Pyramid, was only completed in 2018. We have already spanned, I'm telling you, since 2003, when Rinpoche was telling me, take photographs. And now this movie that I started in 2005, finally I'm writing the book about it in 2018. So everything is spanning a lot of time. I'm not like starting a film this week, editing it next week, and the next week it's out. No. This is a part and parcel and process of life itself. It's, I'm picking up the clues to what I'm doing just from being aware of what's going on in my environment, of things that are coming to me, of synchronicities, of patterns, of these kind of things. And then there are these moments, aha moments. Oh, yes, of course. And then I'm another notch on in the progress of that project. And it always happens like that. Nothing is contrived or pushed or forced. It comes at its own natural pace. And as far as I'm concerned, it can take as long as it takes, and then come naturally and then to be embedded into the process. For example, later on, in fact, it was only in 2020, last year, that I gave a name to this kind of filmmaking. Bit of a wacky name, but I don't know, it really fits the meaning, kaleidoscopic filmmaking, because it's like, that kaleidoscope, it's like putting appearance, things that happen, you take with a camera, you take visuals, and these are real things happening. These are people, these are places. And you're taking that and you're dissecting it to its inner parts to get out its patterns and to reassemble it together in the form of your own timeline that's going to transmit those inner parts to you automatically. That's the aim of kaleidoscopic filmmaking. I'm not saying that I'm actually achieving that yet. It's my aim. I'm practicing. I'm making a number of films to practice, or have been making a number of films to practice this process. And this, in fact, kaleidoscopic filmmaking, this is describing the movie I made last year, Visions of Bosnia, a movie on the pyramids in Bosnia. Very extraordinary place. And again, a lovely, wonderful story around that. And how I embedded these 2 pictures, I'm going to show you a larger copy of these later on. This is the Crystal of Time, and this is Diamond Lens Doorway to Infinity. And Diamond Lens Doorway to Infinity sits inside the very heart of Crystal of Time. These are photo collage art pieces. Now, this picture, for example, is 7 feet long. This is 6 feet long. So they're big, they're really, really big. And these are embedded, these two pictures are embedded into this movie Visions of Bosnia, which is a kaleidoscopic film. This was the first film I've made that I actually started making the film knowing what I was doing. As in, I need to find the shape, I need to find the pictures, the sheer symbols, the meanings that correspond to this place. I need to assemble them into a shape that has a meaning, and then I will embed that into the timing, like that. So this was the first time I actually had a kind of method to work with, and it was so easy when I could use the method. It was wonderful. I mean, before that, I was struggling to try and understand which order to do and how to. Now, suddenly I had this method, and it made this process so much easier. So again, coming back to the timeline. Now, in 2007, when Rinpoche passed away in Nepal, I came to live in India, in Mussoorie in Uttarakhand, India. And within a week of getting there, it was an extraordinary meeting with Leela, and then subsequently together with Dr. Das. And I made a silent promise to myself when I came to live in India. I mean, I'd been to India many times before. This wasn't my first time coming. I'd lived in Nepal already for the last 6 years, since 2001. So now I was coming to India, but I was coming to live in India. This was different than just visiting. And I made a silent promise to myself that I would not leave India until I had traveled the whole of the river Ganges. I mean, it was one of those flippant kind of comments in your mind, you know, like as aspiration suddenly comes and you're like, I will not leave this country until I have traveled the whole river Ganga, you know, but I kind of did that. And, you know, I kid you not, like universe is very fast to mirror to us what we wish and what we have real aspiration for. So within 1 week, I find myself in the company of these two dear friends who are both no more, who took me again under their wing and said, let's make a film on Ganga. Now, Ganga didn't come up like that because of my promise. I didn't even tell them that I had this Ganga thing. But Leela had just inaugurated rather, an art gallery at the back of her property in Mussoorie. She had this lovely big estate just below us where we lived. You know, in Mussoorie, everything's like this. So we were like up there and she was just down there kind of thing. She had this beautiful big estate. And at the back of it was this old, huge kind of hangar that she just turned into an art gallery of the birth of Ganga, the mythology of the birth of Ganga. I mean, it was quite uncanny. When I heard this, I was like, oh, here we go. I suddenly had a sort of understanding that, you know, there was a total purpose behind this. I'd been brought here, this Ganga thing had started, and boom, here we go. So we decided to make a film with 3 parts after a lot of deliberation. So firstly, we were to have visuals of Ganga. We would only focus on the mountainous stretch of Ganga. So the part, let's say, where she reaches the plains of North India. So we would go from source at Dalmukh to Haridwar, where she's sort of set free into the plains of North India. So here we have, these are pictures that I took myself, Dalmukh, Gangotri, and Rishikesh, Haridwar. So I went out to Ganga. I went out on various trips to different places on Ganga, 1 week or 2 weeks, 10 days, 3 days, 5 days, like this. I studied the places. I did a lot of filming, photography, and getting to know some people there, getting to understand what goes on there. And here are the paintings that Leela had made on the mythology of Ganga. Now, these were not her pictures per se. She had copied these pictures from a Dutch artist's work, but he had produced much smaller pictures in a kind of coffee table size book. And now she blew these up to huge. I mean, some of them were 4 feet by 3 feet. They were large, yeah, very large. And there were 42 of these pictures. Here there are a couple of them that I really like. Here is Ganga falling onto the locks of Shiva so that she doesn't flood the earth. And here is the sage who is burning, Kapil Muni, who is burning through his Agni as he awakes from this. They disturb him and he awakes from this very deep samadhi. And they're burnt to ashes by his Agni that comes from his forehead. And then here, then arriving at the ocean, here's Ganga meeting with the ocean, and the souls of the sons of King Saga who are here being burned are now getting their mukti when Ganga washes over their ashes. Anyway, there are a lot more pictures, very descriptive. Some beautiful details are there. I love this story. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. And the third visuals, the third genre of visuals we'd have would be Dr. Das healing his patients. So here are a couple of photographs of him at a clinic that he's holding here. So then I worked out an outline for the film. It was, at this point, I still didn't really know how to make a film, a kaleidoscopic film like I'm talking about now. I'm going to have this art piece, or I'm going to have a photo collage art piece. And from that, I'm going to embed all those shapes and things into the movie. And then I'm going to have this movie that transmits the meaning to the viewer. I didn't have that yet. This was still 2007. And I still haven't got it fully with my previous film, The Circle of Immortality, about the lamas in Nepal. I'm still figuring that out, yeah? So this is all like fumbling out in the dark and just trying to just do this project that I'm planning, this way of embedding the Dharma into a movie or into an art piece or into a picture. So here we have the film outline for The Golden Bridge, which was the name of the movie the first movie I made with Dr. Das. And you'll just see here I have, there are 3 layers of circles, and here this is like a side view, let's say, of those a slice through if you look at it from the side. So I created 5 sections of Dr. Das. You'll see from the previous, I should have mentioned this before. Let's just run through the categories. There's vessel of mind, vessel of body, healing, vessel of body, vessel of mind. So you'll notice that mirror-like aspect. It can fold on itself. This was something I was already doing with the Circle of Immortality, a very effective way to get this balance in the film. So many minutes up till the center, and there's this theme, that theme, this theme, and then it's again mirrored in the second part of the movie. So the 5 sections of Dr. Das, I mean, I won't go through all of this. These are just an example. I sort of define what's coming in the movie at that stage of the movie. So vessel of mind, the cause. So the intention, he had the idea to help others. This was a mental cause. Vessel of body, the cause. So by having compassion towards the sick people, he was planting the cause for healing. So I would choose visuals that would complement that meaning, not just visuals, but other things that would complement that meaning. Like here we have the element of fire, so I would use red. Here we have the element of earth, I would use yellow. So like this, really kind of making the symbols very apparent. In the center, we have our own space, a kind of a category of its own. There's healing, there's blue space, there's meditation, there's a nature of real healing. And again, now we have the mirror effect, the vessel of body, but instead of the cause, here we have the effect. So we have a healing in the body, healing energy as a result of compassion. You'll see here the cause was by having compassion. So now the cause has become the effect. And the same with mental. He had the intention in the beginning, and now at the end, he has the compassion is the effect. Compassion is a result of compassion. That's quite an interesting thought, huh? So now you'll notice here, these are the visuals broken down. Now, when I showed you the photographs, I showed you 3 categories of photographs. I showed you the River Ganga visuals. I showed you Dr. Das and his patients. And I showed you the mythology of Ganga, the life of, the birth of Ganga as per the pictures that Leela made. Now you'll notice here that this is not showing on this list of 3, You'll notice that this is not actually showing on the list, but instead is written compassion represented as water. What happened? Well, actually something did happen. It was really unfortunate, but there was a kind of fallout between Dr. Das and Leela. Not to go into the details because it's just silly and it's long-winded, but there was a fallout. And then Leela wanted no more to do with this film that was about Dr. Das. And she didn't want her pictures to be in this film with Dr. Das. So there I was, having got many hours of visuals of her beautiful paintings, ready to go into the movie and design the whole movie around the paintings. Now I had to switch tack. Okay, no problem. So now I decided to focus on water visuals. So different kinds of water visuals, and kind of really bring out the idea of compassion. So these are the 3 aspects to the movie. Now you'll see 1, 2, and 3. And you'll see here I made 3 circles interacting, 1, 2, 3. And now we've got 4 extra parts in the center. We've also got an area around the 3 circles that I call healing, and the area outside of the circle, which I call limitless essential being. You could call it source, you could call it awareness, you could call it whatever you like, but basically essential state. Here, in total, there are 8 aspects to the limited space. So that's the space inside the circle, and 1 that lies beyond the circle, number 5, in absolute limitless potential of space, making 9 aspects. Now here would be my sequence of visuals. And again, it's running according to what I showed you before. So you have the cause, and you've got the effect, and then you've got the visuals of Ganga, you've got the visuals of Dr. Das, and you've got this water compassion visuals. Anyway, there's a lot of detail there. But those 9 sections are now identified. And then here you see, here are the 9 sections. And then these are the dissolving visuals that would go in between each section, so that there would be an aspect of continuity from one thing to the next. And it would also give some meaning, some dharma meaning to it. Like, for example, I may have the arm of Dr. Das might be like this in one visual, and then you're kind of like, it'll dissolve into kind of sparkling light. And then you'll see that the light is actually on the top of the water, kind of thing. So there's the idea of this energy inside his arm, this light inside his arm that's creating the healing. So things like that, I'm kind of like very careful to find these little details. Now, I had a wonderful idea for the music. First of all, I used just commercial music for the Golden Bridge. Actually, it was really nice. There was some Ganga bhajan and some other really suitable music for the movie, but it was way too expensive to get the rights. I mean, really, really expensive to get the rights for this music. So I met a very interesting musician in Delhi who's from the lineage of Tansen, the court musician of Akbar. And he had a brilliant idea. He wanted to use different Indian instruments to create the different moods of the film. And in that way, we would, water would be one. And I have it here, actually. I have exactly the categories are here. So, for example, the aspects which are defined, the mountain would be the flute, the river. I'm not going to say this very nicely with my Hindi, so excuse me. The santur, strength of river, the pakwaj, the human suffering, sarangi, the bridges, the surmandal, the light shadow contrast, the dilruba. So like this, these would, he identified that these instruments had this kind of natural quality of mood that would bring out the meaning. And we were in process. I mean, we were really in process. We had a script running. Then Dr. Das died. I mean, it wasn't out of the blue per se, but the whole thing was quite, quite sudden, let's put it that way. So I'm not going to go into that story because it's a whole thing of its own. And so here I was with this wonderful, almost made composition by this Tansen lineage of musicians of the court of Akbar. Wow, sounds wonderfully romantic. And of course, these guys, I mean, they were really, Dr. Das was sponsoring this, and for me to pay for this myself was going to be too expensive at the time. His family also, after he died, they weren't interested in continuing the movie, so I had no option, just to sort of drop it at the point and to think about it, how to continue. And continue I would, but how to continue. So during that time, 2010, we moved from Mussoorie to Kulu Manali Valley. And again, like I had all those pictures from Muktinath, from Mustang, when I made my first 2 photo collage art pictures. I had a lot of photos that I'd taken from, between Haridwar and Gaumukh. Beautiful pictures of Ganga, so many different kinds of pictures, from real close-ups on the water to vast whatever's waterfalls and this and that. So many different types, and wide at Rishikesh, and lovely bridges and all of that. So again, I wanted to do something with these photos. And actually, while I'd been traveling on the river, I'd already started to think about, the next photo collage art picture. I already had 2, remember, that I had shown in the exhibition in Kathmandu, and that was back in 2005. It was a number of years since I had made a photo collage art picture. So I started thinking about making another photo collage art picture. And here is Mirror of Space. And Mirror of Space is really it's the continuation of the last 2 previous pictures in 2005. It does carry it on, but I didn't really know that at the time. And, you don't connect the dots until you look back. Now I can connect the dots. But then I was really making this as a way to express what I wanted to show in the movie. And the first movie that I made, The Golden Bridge, with the commercial music, that was not going to be a movie that I could show out at movie film festivals and things, because I'd have to have the rights for the music to do that. So I needed a new outline. I needed a kind of new way to see this Ganga movie. And these ideas were coming to me through making Mirror of Space. You know, again, it didn't happen overnight. Here I even put the dates. It was a couple of years of work when I was gathering the photos, you know, deciding which ones may work for it, thinking about the ideas, how to do all of this, and just letting things fall into place. So what I want to show you here before I get into the meaning of the picture is something about the pictures. You'll see this is not, you know, a computer graphic. Perhaps up until that point, or this point in my talk, you may be thinking I'm just making these on the computer. Not at all. Absolutely not at all. These are, I mean, this is the blue you can see at the background. That's plyboard that's covered with cloth, so stretched around the plyboard. And then on top of that, this shape, you'll see just there's some, whoops, sorry, go back. You'll see here some shadow, which shows it's not, you know, this is a piece of cardboard, hard card, that's been, again, covered by white cloth and then stuck onto the plyboard covered with cloth. So you see, this gives me the possibility to make different shapes, to use different colors, and then on top of the shapes, as in here, this white shape, I place the photos. And in this section of Mirror of Space, you'll see that the photos are all of snow and ice. And there's a kind of mosaic. You see here, this is a tree, yeah? But this is a rock. But it's extending, looking like the whole thing's a tree. And again, there'll be a continuation of, for example, here, the lines between one mountain range and another, but they're not. I've just put them together like that to give it a continuity. So you see here how this rock and this tree become a tree, and here how another tree is sort of coming off here. And it's a mosaic, but at the same time, it's a kind of, you know, funky mosaic. It's not, you know, correct in the sense of how we see things outside of us, but it also shows that everything belongs to everything, yeah? And again, with the water, with the fluidity of water visuals here on the red color, you'll see that how they come into each other in a kind of mosaic, one into the other. Here as well, this is ice and this is a tree, but there's this kind of like connection. And again here in the upper part, you'll see this clouds, and again this sort of shape is all coming together. So I wanted to show you that detail because, of course, you know, we're looking at a computer screen here. We can't see a great amount of detail here. We can just see the whole thing in one. So as I was going along Ganga, of course, I was heavily influenced by Om. Om is everywhere along Ganga. Everywhere you turn, there's Om. And at first, I wanted to try and squeeze Om into the shape of India and sort of have India looking like a woman and then Om inside the woman. And, you know, I really tried hard, but it got too complicated. It just didn't work. It was a nice idea, but it didn't work. So anyway, Om, perfect. And water visuals, extremely good for expressing the meaning of Om. I mean, here we have 3 Sanskrit letters, the A, the U, and the M. And we have A, which is representing, let's say, form, physicality, materiality, appearance. I mean, I know there are a million other meanings of A in Om, but let's just keep it simple here. And so for the A of Om, I would use all the solid aspect of water, which is ice and snow and you know, other icicles and small little you know, crystal-like stalagmites, stalactites, these kind of things. I would use these kind of pictures for the art. And then for the U, I would use pictures of liquid water, running water. So now the surface of water. This was an amazing experiment. This was so much fun. Something I had never understood about water until I really got my camera on it. I could see that there are so many different textures to water, bubbles and straight and silky and agitated and movimental and still and so many textures of water. It was just like material. And then you could see through the water. If it's, you know, quite a shallow area of the river, you could see through to the water and to colored pebbles and to other things underneath the water. Astounding, a really, really great practice doing this. And then, of course, the gaseous state of water, which is representing this state of the So two parts to it here. The crescent, which is representing the part with potential, and the bindu part of it, which is its dissolution to emptiness, to its inherent aspect, its inherent nature. I forgot to mention here, the flowing liquidity of water is representing this sense of formlessness. So we have here the A is the form, the U is the formless, and the M is the essential state with both potential and with its empty, dissolving nature. So the other important, really important thing here in this picture, which I also wanted to embed into the movie, is this idea of drawing back the elements. In the first two pictures, we'd seen the elements in action. And here they were, ball shape and triangle and red and this and that. And they were really like, you know, they had photographs of them showing the activities around those elements. So they were really they were taking up the whole appearance in that sense. And here, what I've done in Mirror of Space is draw back all those elements, like piercing through this surface of appearance through to this essential nature that is holding this fundamental state of which is holding this meaning of our essential nature, this sense of our formless and inherent potential in essential state, all of it together inside the space here in the center of this picture where the elements have been drawn back. So like really, here we're piercing the space. Here we're seeing what's inside all of this story, this superficial story that's on the surface. What's really behind that? Remember, this has always been and is always my aspiration to put this level into the movies, to embed the shapes, the symbols, the reoccurring knowledge, because we know these things. They are part of us. They're part of our, let's say, the archetypal parts of our consciousness. We know what they mean. We don't need to say, it is this, it means that. We don't need to be intellectual about it. We just know. It just is, and we know it. So this is a very, let's say, skillful way to transmit the Dharma to others, is through embedding this symbol. Well, theoretically so, let's put it that way. Theoretically, it is a very skillful way to express the meaning of the Dharma to people without having to explain it too deeply, because it's just too much of a jump to start explaining, the details of nature of mind and of appearance and the reality of existence and absolute and relative reality and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot to stomach for many people. So to be able to transmit these meanings without having to say too much, is really the essence of what I'm trying to do here. So the second film that I made on Ganga, it was using pretty much the same visuals, a few extras that I took freshly for it. And I also changed the order of the movie. I switched the route. In the Golden Bridge, I had started at Gamuk and I'd finished at Haridwar. In crossing bridges, I started at Haridwar and I finished at Gamuk. Now, if you ask me today why I did this, I actually can't remember, because I mean, energy goes both ways, right? It's not like just because it's coming that way, the river's falling down this way, or because, say, you know, if this is representing the body energy, the energy wants to rise, or I don't remember why I changed the order, but I did, obviously for some reason. I'll remember it one day maybe. So also for this movie, obviously I'm not going to use the commercial music this time because it's too expensive. I had the idea that instead of having this composition made, that I would use Tibetan singing bowls. And I had a friend in Kathmandu who owned the largest number of Tibetan singing bowls in Kathmandu, and they are attuned to the planets. So, and the planets, of course, are attuned to emotional qualities. So this was a really good way I could say, okay, let's take here wrath, or let's take here calm, or water, or whatever, according to which planet. And I could use these different sounds in order to express that emotion. That was really helpful. Sound is such a good way to guide emotion and mood in a film. It's very well. It's half the story of the movie. So you see the layout of Crossing Bridges here. Now we have 5 segments, and Crossing Bridges, here as I've written, Crossing Bridges has a pre-planned outline which takes the shape of a suspension bridge that is divided into 5 segments with near mirrored timing. Again, I'm using the mirror. It's a very good way to bring balance to the movie. In this case, sections 1 and 5, 2 and 4 mirror each other. So you see here, that's 3 minutes and something, that's 3 minutes and something. Even timing here, section 2, 7 minutes and something, 7 minutes and something, and then the central part, 13 minutes something. So you see each time the time goes, the time increases, the height on the bridge increases. So in this sense, we've got the lotus flower with the 5 petals, which is holding up the We've got the of the the U, the and again the spiral at the top of the I wanted to show you the 2 more of my photo collage art pictures that came next. Now you'll see that the Rainbow Symphony, I'm going to go back because I want to show you here, the double triangle is indicated, but it's not actually drawn, and the center is here. But it's indicated because in a way, each of the pictures is going to continue and be examined closer in certain respects in the next picture. So we saw in the beginning the 2 keys, 1 lock, then the pure vision transformed into organized confusion. Now here comes the mirror of space around the Ganga story. You'll see that the first 2 photo collage art pictures were around my my trip in Mustang in Nepal. So you've got that story is accompanying those 2 pictures. The story of Ganga is accompanying this picture. Then you've got the Rainbow Symphony. And the Rainbow Symphony, the theme of the pictures in Rainbow Symphony is flowers, trees, branches, trunks of trees. And here I've collected the trees from all around the world. Very interesting because the meaning of this piece is really, we're looking at very, very closely in detail at the first moments of creation, the first explosion of movement into creation. And I'm not talking about Big Bang here. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about cells, each cell. I'm talking about things that happen in the nucleus of the cell, quarks, and all of that. I'm talking about larger stars, galaxies. So this is like a template for at any level of macro, micro dimension, let's say. Then Key of Life, very much, sorry, one more thing, Rainbow Symphony. So Rainbow Symphony is coming down to the union of light and sound. Rainbow, light, and symphony sound, the union of light and sound. Again, there's so much to talk about each of these pictures. I'm just scratching the surface here, just scratching the surface. Key of Life, again, this is really coming into the process of manifestation step by step by step. And this is shown here in this picture, in this emergence from pure awareness, from pure consciousness, from essence into full manifestation. And then around the edge, we have this aspect of sound. I'm not going to go any deeper into that. It's again, it wouldn't do it justice to say any more. Even saying what I've said is not enough. So, in fact, one of the projects I'm undertaking at the moment is a book about those first 5 pictures, which I call Universal Osmosis, which is also the name of my exhibition that I held in London in 2016. And so I decided to keep all those together as series 1 of my work, of my photo collage artwork. You know, I told you each of these pictures is huge. Here behind me, see, this is the real life. This is the real life mirror of space. You know, my whole house is taken up with these things. You know, we had to actually create a wall for the pure vision transformed into organized confusion because it's so long. We had to create a wall for it. So yeah, the first 5 pictures are being described. Currently, I'm working on this book in Universal Osmosis. But these are 2 more photo collage art pictures. My latest 2, there's Crystal of Time, and there's Diamond Lens Doorway to Infinity. So these 2 are part of what I'm calling series 2. I've slightly changed tack here. Since I went to Bosnia, these are pictures that have the whole story of Bosnia around them. So remember, I told you right at the beginning that it's essential to my work that I'm really paying attention to what's happening around me, because that becomes part of the process of the piece of work. So again, it would take me a whole session to describe to you, in fact, probably more than a session to describe to you why I made these pictures the way I made them. But trust me, it's not just by chance. Everything in there has a relevance to the situation. So I have an idea for a new set of Ganga films. This is what I said right in the beginning, is that I'm talking about what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now is I'm deciding how I can make a movie on the whole of Ganga. What I didn't describe to you was, after Dr. Das died in 2010, for a few years, you know, I was just moving along with these movies. But then in 2013, after I made Crossing Bridges already, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to continue. I'm going to take the visuals. I'm going to continue along Ganga and I'll make out a movie in the end. Now, it took me until 2020, as in January last year, that I was down at the festival in Sundarban on Sagar Island on January the 14th, 2020. It took me that long to travel the whole river and to take visuals. I mean, of course, not every single step of the way, but all the key places. And I went also off the beaten track as well to beautiful places, especially Bihar. It was wonderful, just wonderful. It's beautiful, really wonderful part of Ganga. So I have all these visuals. I have the visuals of, let's say, the whole stretch of Ganga from source to mouth. And now, after all this time, I am settling down to make either one long movie or to make a series of smaller movies or both. I don't know. It'll come up. And what am I going to be embedding into that movie in order to bring out? It's like I want Ganga to speak to the viewer through the movie. I want her to speak to us. This is my intention with this movie. So I will need a photo collage art piece or an installation piece in order to do that. Now, I actually have already. I'm actually a little bit further along the line than just these questions. I've been working on this for the last year, let's say, but again, it's been not every day, all day. It's been just a slow, gradual process. Idea comes, another idea comes, write it down. And now is the time that I'm really moving on it. Also, there's a point I make at the bottom of the screen here is that this new movie will also embrace the aspirations for the Ganga movie that I had envisaged all those years ago with both Dr. Das and Leela Sarup in Missouri, and at that time, 2007 to 2010. Both of them have passed on now. And luckily, I was able to create a reconciliation between them before Dr. Das passed away. Leela passed away another 4 years later. Yeah, there was a reconciliation, which was very nice. So yeah, really, it's very exciting to move along with that. Now, talking about a piece of work that is going to be embedded. On the left, it looks like nothing, but actually, this is a very, 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 and I say very, powerful archetypal symbol. Because since I got the idea that I wanted to work with this symbol for some reason, I don't know why, I just trusted that. A lot of things have happened. How I see it is that when you pull an archetype, almost let's call it right brain, left brain at this point. Let's say that all those unconscious, subconscious things are existing in the right brain. It's not really like that, but let's just say it's like that, just for argument's sake. So pulling the archetypal shape out of the right brain, and then you start to logically kind of understand it with the left brain. It's a very long process, but you will understand it. You must, because it's part of you. It's part of your archetypal being. You know it. You may not be able to say what it is, but you know it. So if you actually focus long enough on a symbol, it will give you information. It will give you information. So on the right-hand side, I have a very interesting piece of work here, which is a model. In fact, this is not completed yet, but it's a model of something that I developed for a museum in London, which has been slightly messed up by a COVID situation, let's say. But anyway, very good. I'm really ahead with the work. And I'm glad that I was pushed to do this work. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have done it. But then again, this is another example of how life is carrying you along. Niket, would you mind playing, please, this piece by piece assembly? You have the video, right?
You have to stop your share screen, Susan, then I can share.
Okay. I think I've only got one more visual after this.
Yeah, so why don't you finish that and then we can show this? Oh, okay, one second.
I stopped already.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
It wasn't anything very interesting. It was a website address or something, which I can tell you in another way.
One second.
So this piece that Niket's going to play now is a piece that I've designed for a museum in London, for an exhibition in London, which now may or may not happen because of COVID and all of that. Okay. Okay, so that is something I designed. As you'll see, that's a computer design. And designing, making a model or a physical representation of something is very different than like drawing on a computer. Because in a computer, you can hang things in the space, you can make it this big, that big, however big you want. But you need, in the world around us, we need measurement, we need relation, we need something to hold things together up and down. You know, there's gravity, things fall down. So I knew that the next step for this piece would be to make a model of it, which is in process. Now, I didn't make this piece as a art piece or installation piece as it is, a device actually. I didn't make this to become the art piece or installation piece that I would embed into my movie on Ganga. But somehow this piece that I made for another reason, which is now looking pear-shaped because of COVID story, you know, the art world has been hit like never before by COVID. Obviously, they've got a backlog of exhibitions. This is a big museum, so they have a long waiting list. So it's very unlikely that the exhibition we were talking about doing in 2024, already in 2019, will happen anywhere before 2030, if at all. But anyway, I've been left with this piece of work, which is actually I mean, in itself, again, it would take me a whole session to tell you the meaning of it. But I've been left with this piece of work, which is uncannily similar to the concepts that I really want to put into this movie about Ganga. Because I'm looking at her system as a holistic, this holistic system of existence, you know? Here she is in different dimensional states simultaneously, as solid as ice, as liquid as water, as gas, as cloud. And each of these states is kind of representing different states of our existence: birth, life, death, and in between. And again, this beautiful cycle of recycling and this, I mean, this knowledge that Ganga is not a thing. It's not a static thing that sits. It's a movement. It's an energy. It's a relationship between different dimensions, between water and earth. One has to support the other. Between fire that heats the water and creates gas, or cools the water and creates solid. So these are very nice points. And this image that we just played to you is containing actually this knowledge of the movement of existence within its process. So that's where I am. I am now deciding which art piece I'm going to embed into my movies on Ganga. So a series of shorter ones, one long one. Let's see what happens.
Wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne. Interesting concept, actually. Personally, I was expecting you to take us through a journey of Ganga, but this was a really different way of really looking at the entire aspect.
I can certainly do that too. I've got a lot of stories. I mean, but really what I wanted to do was to explain to you how I will take that concept and I will turn it into an art form that will transmit the meaning of that, whatever it is.
The essence. Yeah. Great. Would anyone like to ask anything of Suzanne about the concepts or anything that they want to clarify? If you can just raise your hand or unmute yourself. Okay, I guess the concepts that you've spoken have really hit us on the... Yeah, Amrit, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, Suzanne, that was beautiful because, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
That was beautiful. I mean, because I just have that much of knowledge of Vajrayana Path, like tip of a hair. But the tip of a hair, there are a million Buddhas, right? So So it was so beautiful, the open vision and I forgot the first one, but I could so relate to it. And like you yourself said, that it is a beautiful way to kind of represent dharma, your own sadhana and your own experiences and your own passion. It reflects so beautifully through these images. They really touched me, and I loved listening about them. And I could actually experience what you're trying to trying to portray, and that dharma out of it, and that your own sadhana and your own level of wisdom and compassion.
Beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Amrit. Actually, the mandalas really are showing things up. Yes, Joyita, go ahead. Go ahead. Joyita, you were on screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Susan, this is it's so touching, and it reveals the depth of your journey and the passion. I really don't know what to say, Susan, because I'm just so amazed at the depth of the work, and it's fabulous. And I don't think I've really understood the, probably, like Amrit said, just the tip of the hair. It's very moving, very, very moving.
Fantastic. Hats off.
Absolutely. Very deep stuff.
Very, very,
Very deep. Very,
I'm-
very deep.
I'm like in complete awe of the work that you've been doing. It's like your life's journey showing in your installations.
And just taking it so easy, giving it time, it'll happen when it's meant to be. Just allowing. It's no hurry. It's like all your masters, all what has happened with you, I think it's all coming together to say, hey, give it time. It'll happen at the right time.
That's the beauty of it. I mean, the whole those moments of, as you know, you've seen it yourself, those moments of synchronicity are just like, I mean, it's pure bliss, right?
Completely.
It's itself what it is it.
Yep.
Yes.
It produces that result in itself. That's what I really want to say. Not like, oh, what is bliss? Describe it. Oh, it feels like this or that. No, it is. It is like that.
It's like what Niket said. I was expecting also a journey of Ganga when you were in the picture.
I could certainly.
This one was so brilliant. I mean, we couldn't ever imagine this kind of information. We would have never even guessed. I think it's so phenomenal.
Do you know what I forced myself to do is, after every single journey, I made sure that I would publish an article with some journal, magazine, newspaper, no matter how Mickey Mouse it was, whatever, I would still publish an article on each of the sections of Ganga to make me also focus on the more, let's say, historical facts and the place names. And otherwise, I'm not even in that realm when I'm traveling Ganga. I'm looking at these shapes and symbols and all these other things. So, but I want to be holistic, and I want to sort of cross dimensions. So I'm forced myself to write these articles, which are very like, oh, this place is this, and this happens this, and the yogi of whatever, and then, you know, name of the person, and all these things are kind of there, which is quite nice, because I've got a series of articles of the whole of the River Ganga also.
You are so blessed. You are so blessed. Each time things have just opened up at the right time. It's just meant to be.
Well, I promised that I would stay in India until I had completed the River Ganga. So I don't know if that means I have to finish the movies as well, or I'm free to go now. I've got to the source mouth.
You're not going anywhere. You're going to be here.
You'll always go with the flow, Susan. That's what I've got to see.
I paid my penance.
No, but you're always with the flow. That's what I've noticed since I've known you. So I'm sure things will just flow.
Thank you, Niket, for
Thank you. Thank you,
Fantastic.
Jyoti.
Fantastic,
Thanks,
Susan.
for
Thank you.
sharing all this.
Anyone else would like to say anything or share anything?
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Okay, that was wonderful, Susan. I think you really opened up a different aspect of the way that you can look at things. And I'm sure, the models that you're making, they're mandalas in themselves and very, very powerful symbols, according to me. And absolutely, I think I look forward to seeing that piece of you which you showed in the video. It's going to be really fantastic. So
I have to make all the Ganga movies now. I mean, I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of visuals. You have no idea the task ahead of me. It's not a
I guess you're going to enjoy it, right? So it'll be all worth it.
It is, and it is enjoyable, but there's this aspect of stress, but it's good stress. It's that stress that's making you push your boundaries.
Yeah.
It's not stress that's like, it's like, but it's like, how, oh, am I got it right? And am I doing, that kind of stress, but it's good stress.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just
so the movies are to come.
Yeah. We look forward to seeing the movies. Maybe we'll screen it on the awareness, for the awareness group at that point.
Great.
Okay.
Well, good night to you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Tomorrow
you.
we have our regular session, so we'll see you all around. Pranayam in the morning, 2:15 we've got book reading, 3:45 we've got meditation. So we'll see you all around. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Good night, everyone.